The Arizona sun beat down mercilessly on the cracked earth, turning the desert floor into a furnace that shimmered with heat waves. Sam Crawford wiped the sweat from his brow as he guided his horse through the narrow canyon that led to Willow Springs, one of the few water sources that hadn't dried up during this cursed drought. His cattle were scattered across the valley, desperately searching for grass that had long since withered to dust. "Come on, Belle," he murmured to his mare, patting her neck as she picked her way carefully over the rocky terrain. The horse's ears flicked nervously, and Sam noticed her tension. Something was wrong. As they rounded a bend in the canyon, Sam's breath caught in his throat. There, tangled in a mess of barbed wire near the water's edge, was the most magnificent horse he'd ever seen. The stallion's coat was a deep chestnut that gleamed like burnished copper, his powerful frame speaking of wild freedom and untamed spirit. But now that spirit was broken, the great horse lying on his side, barely breathing, his legs cut and bleeding from the wire that held him prisoner. "Jesus," Sam whispered, dismounting quickly. He'd put up that fence line months ago to keep his cattle from wandering too far toward Apache territory. Now, it had become a death trap. The stallion's dark eyes rolled toward him, filled with pain and terror. Sam approached slowly, his hands raised. "Easy there, boy, easy." But as he drew closer, the horse thrashed weakly, the wire cutting deeper into his flesh with each movement. "You're making it worse," came a soft voice from behind him. Sam spun around, his hand instinctively moving to his Colt .45. Standing not 20 feet away was an Apache girl, maybe 16 years old, her long black hair braided with small beads that caught the sunlight. She wore a simple buckskin dress and moccasins, and her dark eyes held no fear as she looked at him, only concern for the wounded animal. "What are you doing here?" Sam demanded, his voice rougher than intended. He hadn't seen another human being in weeks, and the last thing he expected was to find an Apache girl on his land. "Following him," she said simply, nodding toward the stallion. "My people call him Nashoba. He has roamed these mountains for many seasons." Sam kept his hand near his gun, but something in her voice made him pause. There was reverence there, and genuine sorrow. "Well, he's on my property now, and he's about done for." The girl stepped closer, ignoring Sam's weapon entirely. "He is not done, but if you continue to approach him like that, he will die fighting the wire. And I suppose you know better." Sam's words were sharp, but even as he spoke them, he could see the stallion was growing weaker. The animal's breathing was becoming shallow, and blood was seeping into the dry earth beneath him. "I know horses," she said quietly, "and I know this one. He saved my life once when I was small. A bear had cornered me, and Nashoba charged between us. He fears men, but he knows women's voices bring no harm." Sam studied her face, looking for deception but finding only truth. The girl began to hum softly, a low, melodic sound that seemed to calm the air itself. Slowly, incredibly, the stallion's thrashing subsided. His breathing evened out, and those wild eyes fixed on her with something like recognition. "I'll be damned," Sam muttered under his breath. "You have wire cutters?" the girl asked, still humming intermittently. Sam nodded, retrieving the tools from his saddlebags. "What's your name?" "Aiyana," she replied, kneeling beside the stallion's head. She began to whisper to him in Apache, her voice like water over smooth stones. As Sam worked to cut the wire, he found himself glancing at her face. There was something about her calm presence that reminded him of his wife, Mary, the way she'd gentled their horses with nothing but patience and kindness. The memory hit him like a physical blow, and he had to stop cutting for a moment. "The wire is deep," he said, his voice catching slightly. "He's lost a lot of blood." "Yes," Aiyana agreed, "but his spirit is strong. Feel here." She guided Sam's hand to the horse's chest, where his heart beat steadily despite his injuries. "He wants to live." Working together in the blazing heat, they carefully freed Nashoba from his wire prison. The stallion lay still, trusting somehow in their combined efforts. Sam couldn't help but admire the girl's skill. She seemed to know exactly how to position herself, how to keep the animal calm while Sam worked. "He'll need care," Sam said as they finished. "Clean water, shelter from the sun, and those cuts." He shook his head. "I've got some supplies back at the ranch, but I don't know if it'll be enough." Aiyana looked up at him, her dark eyes serious. "I know the old ways. Plants that heal, songs that bring strength, but he cannot be moved far." Sam glanced around the canyon. It was isolated, hidden from the main trail, with good water and some shade from the overhanging rocks. "We could keep him here for a while. Take turns watching him." Even as he said it, Sam wondered what he was doing. collaborating with an Apache girl of all things, if any of the other ranchers found out. But looking down at the magnificent stallion, he knew he couldn't just walk away. "You would do this?" Aiyana asked, surprise flickering across her features. "I've seen enough death," Sam said quietly. "Maybe it's time to try saving something for a change." The sun was beginning to set, painting the canyon walls in shades of gold and crimson. Nashoba's breathing had stabilized, and though he was still weak, there was a spark of life in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Sam and Aiyana sat on opposite sides of the horse, an unlikely pair united by their shared determination to see him live. "Tomorrow," Aiyana said softly, "I will bring medicine plants. And you?" "I'll bring bandages and grain," Sam replied. "And Belle here can carry water if the spring runs low." As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Sam realized that for the first time in 2 years, he didn't feel completely alone. It was a dangerous feeling, he knew. Nothing good could come from this arrangement, but as he looked at Nashoba's peaceful face and heard Aiyana's gentle humming, he decided that maybe, just maybe, some risks were worth taking. Dawn broke over the canyon with a pale yellow light that promised another scorching day. Sam had arrived at Willow Springs before sunrise, his saddlebags heavy with supplies, clean bandages, grain for Nashoba, and a bottle of whiskey that he'd been saving for particularly lonely nights. The stallion was awake when he arrived, his great head lifted as he watched Sam approach with wary but no longer panicked eyes. "Easy, boy," Sam murmured, kneeling beside the horse. The wounds looked better than he'd expected. No signs of infection, though they were still raw and painful. "Your lady friend should be here soon." As if summoned by his words, Aiyana appeared at the canyon entrance, moving silently across the rocky ground. She carried a leather pouch and what looked like a small clay pot, her movements graceful and purposeful. Sam found himself watching her approach with more interest than he cared to admit. "How is he?" she asked, settling beside Nashoba's head. The stallion nickered softly and she placed her hand on his neck. "Better than yesterday. No fever that I can tell." Sam gestured to his supplies. "I brought what I could from the ranch." Aiyana nodded, opening her leather pouch to reveal an assortment of dried plants, roots, and what appeared to be tree bark. "My grandmother taught me these healing ways. This is bee balm for cleaning wounds, willow bark for pain, and sage for purifying." She began to prepare a paste in her clay pot, grinding the plants with a smooth stone while adding water from the spring. Sam watched, fascinated despite himself. He'd always dismissed Indian remedies as superstition, but there was something methodical and scientific about her approach. "Your grandmother, is she still alive?" Sam asked, trying to make conversation as he organized his own supplies. "She lives with the spirits now," Aiyana replied softly, "but her knowledge lives in me. She said healing comes not just from plants, but from the intention behind their use. You must truly want the patient to heal." Sam thought about his own losses, how helpless he'd felt watching Mary and little Thomas waste away with cholera, how all the doctor's medicines had failed. "Sometimes wanting isn't enough," he said quietly. Aiyana looked up from her work, studying his face. "You have lost someone." It wasn't a question, and Sam felt his defensive walls rising. "That's none of your business." "No," she agreed, returning to her preparation. "But grief can poison the hands that try to heal. My grandmother taught me this too." The words stung because they rang true. Sam had been carrying his anger and sorrow like a weight, letting it color everything he touched. He watched Aiyana work, noting the gentle care she took with each plant, the reverence in her movements. "What's your father think about you being out here?" Sam asked, changing the subject. "He knows I follow the old ways of healing, but he does not know I am here with you." Her voice carried a note of worry. "There has been much tension lately. Some of the young warriors speak of war again." Sam's hand moved instinctively toward his gun. "War? I thought the treaties mean nothing when white men continue to take what they want." Aiyana's tone was matter-of-fact, not accusatory. "My father tries to keep peace, but he is one voice among many." She had finished preparing the paste and now began to apply it gently to Nashoba's wounds. The stallion remained still, as if he understood she was trying to help him. Sam found himself impressed by her skill. She worked with the confidence of someone much older. "Here," she said, handing him a portion of the mixture. "You clean the cuts on his other side. The plants work better when both our hands apply them." Working together, they tended to Nashoba's injuries. Sam was surprised at how soothing the herbal paste felt, even on his own rough hands. The stallion seemed to relax under their ministrations, his breathing becoming deeper and more regular. "You're good at this," Sam admitted grudgingly. So are you, Aiyana replied. Your hands are gentle despite their hardness. They worked in comfortable silence for a while, the morning sun climbing higher but not yet reaching the sheltered canyon floor. Sam found himself stealing glances at her face, noting the concentration in her dark eyes, the way her tongue darted out slightly when she focused on a particularly delicate task. Why did you agree to help him? Aiyana asked suddenly. Your people and mine. We are supposed to be enemies. Sam paused in his work, considering her question. I don't know, he said finally. Maybe because I'm tired of everything dying around me. Maybe because, hell, I don't know. It just seemed like the right thing to do. My grandmother would say the spirits brought us together for a reason. Your grandmother would be wrong, Sam said, but there was no heat in his words. Sometimes things just happen. No spirits, no grand design, just chance. Aiyana smiled slightly. Perhaps, but chance or spirits, Nashoba is healing. That matters more than the reason. As they finished treating the stallion's wounds, Sam realized that for the past hour, he hadn't thought once about his losses, his loneliness, or his anger. Something about the girl's presence, her quiet competence, had pushed those dark thoughts aside. I should go, Aiyana said, gathering her supplies, but I will return this evening to check on him. Evening? Sam frowned. Won't that be dangerous for you? Being out after dark? Less dangerous than being seen in daylight, she replied. There are riders who patrol these areas, both white and Apache. Neither would understand what we are doing here. Sam nodded, understanding the wisdom in her words. Their arrangement was precarious enough without adding unnecessary risks. I'll stay with him during the day. Keep watch. As Aiyana prepared to leave, she hesitated. The whiskey you brought, it is for cleaning wounds? Sam looked at the bottle, then back at her. Among other things. Good. Save it for cleaning. Nashoba needs us clear-headed. She paused. And so do you. Before Sam could respond, she was gone, disappearing into the canyon's shadows like smoke. He was left alone with the stallion, her words echoing in his mind. For the first time in months, he found himself wondering what Mary would think of all this. Somehow he suspected she would approve. Nashoba lifted his head and looked at Sam with those intelligent dark eyes, and Sam could swear he saw understanding there. Well, boy, he said quietly, looks like we're both in for more than we bargained for. The sun climbed higher, and Sam settled in for a long day of watching and waiting, his thoughts drifting between the wounded horse beside him and the Apache girl who had somehow begun to heal wounds he didn't even know he still carried. The third day brought unwelcome visitors to Sam's ranch. He was preparing to leave for Willow Springs when he spotted dust on the horizon, 3 riders approaching fast. Sam cursed under his breath, recognizing the lead horse. Jake Morrison, his nearest neighbor and the most vocal anti-Apache voice in the territory, was paying him a visit. Crawford, Morrison called out as he reined in his horse near the porch. Behind him rode his son Pete and Tom Bradley, both known for their quick tempers and quicker guns. We need to talk. Sam stepped out of his cabin, his rifle casual in his hands but ready. Morning, Jake. What brings you out this way? Morrison's weathered face was grim. Apache sign, fresh tracks heading toward your spread. You seen anything? Nothing unusual, Sam replied carefully. It wasn't entirely a lie. Aiyana's presence had become quite usual to him over the past 3 days. This drought's got everyone and everything looking for water. That's what I'm afraid of, Morrison said, dismounting. Tom here found his water trough fouled yesterday, looked deliberate, and there's been talk of missing cattle over at the Henderson place. Pete Morrison spat into the dust. Time we sent them savages a message they won't forget. Sam kept his expression neutral, though his grip tightened on his rifle. Maybe the Hendersons just miscounted. Happens when stock scatter looking for grass. You defending them, Crawford? Tom Bradley's voice carried a dangerous edge. Man might wonder why you're so eager to make excuses for Apache. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut. Sam had known these men for years, but the drought and recent tensions had made everyone jumpy. I'm not defending anybody, just saying we shouldn't go looking for trouble where there might not be any. Morrison studied Sam's face intently. You've been scarce lately. Haven't seen you in town for weeks. What you been up to out here? Tending my cattle. Same as always. Sam met his gaze steadily. Ranch work doesn't stop just because other folks want to ride around looking for Indians. Funny thing, Pete said, walking his horse closer. Saw fresh tracks down by Devil's Canyon yesterday. Unshod pony heading toward your land. You sure you ain't seen nothing? Sam's heart hammered, but he kept his voice level. I told you nothing unusual. Maybe you boys should spend less time tracking shadows and more time protecting your own spreads. Morrison's eyes narrowed. You're different, Crawford. Used to be you'd ride with us when there was Indian trouble. Now you act like you don't give a damn. Maybe I don't, Sam said quietly. Lost enough sleep over things I can't control. The three men exchanged glances. Finally, Morrison remounted his horse. If you see anything, and I mean anything, you send word. We're forming a patrol to sweep the area, could use another gun. I'll think about it, Sam replied, knowing he had no intention of joining their hunt. As the riders disappeared into the heat haze, Sam felt a cold knot in his stomach. If Morrison was organizing patrols, it was only a matter of time before someone discovered the canyon. He needed to warn Aiyana. But first, he had to check on Nashoba. The stallion was showing remarkable improvement, able to stand for short periods now, though still favoring his wounded legs. Sam arrived at the canyon to find the horse on his feet, drinking from the spring. Looking better every day, Sam murmured, pleased despite his worry. He spent the morning applying fresh bandages and checking the wounds, which were healing cleanly thanks to Aiyana's plant medicines. The combination of her traditional remedies and his practical care seemed to be working perfectly. But the peaceful routine was shattered when Sam heard voices echoing from the canyon entrance. Tracks lead right down here, Pa. Sam's blood ran cold. Pete Morrison's voice, and getting closer. He quickly gathered his supplies and led Belle deeper into the canyon, hoping the shadows would hide them. Nashoba, sensing danger, stood perfectly still despite his injuries. Don't see nothing, came Morrison's gruff voice. Just old tracks. Could be from anybody. Look at this, Pete said, and Sam heard footsteps on stone. Someone's been here recent. See how the grass is trampled by the water? Sam held his breath, one hand on Belle's neck to keep her quiet. Through a gap in the rocks, he could see the two men examining the ground where he and Aiyana had been working. Could be Crawford, Morrison said after a moment. His cattle drink here sometimes. Maybe, but I don't like it. Too hidden, too convenient. Perfect place for an ambush. Sam's heart sank as he realized they were right. The canyon was an ideal spot for Apache warriors to hide and strike at passing travelers. If Morrison reported this to the other ranchers, they'd demand it be searched regularly. We'll check it again tomorrow, Morrison decided, and I want guards posted on the main trail. If there's Apache moving through here, we'll catch them. The voices faded as father and son moved on, but Sam remained hidden for another hour, making sure they were truly gone. When he finally emerged, he found Nashoba watching him with those intelligent eyes, as if the stallion understood the danger they were all in. That evening, Aiyana arrived earlier than usual, slipping into the canyon like a shadow. Sam immediately told her about Morrison's visit and the patrol plans. They suspect something, he concluded. It's not safe for you to keep coming here. Aiyana listened without interruption, her face grave. There is more, she said finally. My father met with the war chief yesterday. White soldiers are moving through Apache lands, saying they search for renegades. But they take what they want and leave nothing but anger behind. How long before? Sam began. Not long, she said simply. My father counsels patience, but the young men grow restless. They speak of striking first, before the soldiers can gather more strength. They sat in heavy silence, watching Nashoba graze peacefully on the sparse grass. The stallion seemed almost normal now, his wounds healing well, his strength returning. But the world around their hidden sanctuary was growing more dangerous by the day. We could move him, Sam suggested. There's a box canyon on my land, hidden from the main trail. He'd be safe there. Aiyana shook her head. He is not ready for such a journey, and if your neighbors find him on your land, they'd assume I stole him, Sam finished. Or worse, that I'm harboring Apache horses for raids. What do we do? Aiyana asked, and Sam heard something he'd never heard from her before. Uncertainty. Sam looked at the girl who had brought such unexpected purpose back into his life, then at the magnificent horse they'd saved together. We keep him alive, he said finally, whatever it takes. And we pray that cooler heads prevail before this whole territory explodes. But even as he spoke the words, Sam could feel the weight of approaching storm clouds, both literal and figurative. The drought had pushed everyone to the breaking point, and it would take very little to tip the balance from uneasy peace to open warfare. As if reading his thoughts, Aiyana stood and walked to Nashoba, placing her hand on the stallion's neck. In the old stories, she said softly, horses like this one were bridges between worlds. Maybe that is what he is meant to be for us. Sam joined her beside the horse, noting how Nashoba stood calmly between them, no longer afraid. Maybe, he agreed, but bridges can be burned too. Thunder rumbled in the distance. promising the first rain in months. But Sam wondered if it would come in time to heal the parched land, or if the storm would bring only more trouble to their fragile sanctuary. The storm that had been threatening for days finally broke at dawn on the 7th day, bringing with it chaos that would change everything. Sam was awakened by the sound of gunfire in the distance, not the single shots of hunters, but the rapid, angry volleys of men at war. He dressed quickly and rode hard toward Willow Springs, his heart pounding with fear for Aiyana's safety. The rain had turned the desert floor treacherous, and bells struggled through the mud as lightning split the sky overhead. When he reached the canyon, he found Nashoba standing alert, his ears pricked toward the sounds of battle. "Easy, boy," Sam murmured, but his own nerves were stretched taut. The stallion was nearly healed now, able to move freely though still bearing the scars of his ordeal. In the past week, Sam had watched him transform from a dying animal to a creature of power and grace once again. Aiyana appeared at the canyon entrance, but this time she wasn't alone. Behind her walked an Apache warrior, his face painted for war, a rifle in his hands. Sam's hand moved instinctively to his gun, but Aiyana held up a warning gesture. "This is my brother, Takoda," she said, her voice strained. "He has come to take me home." The warrior studied Sam with hostile eyes. He was young, maybe 20, with the lean build of a man who lived hard and traveled fast. When he spoke, his English was heavily accented but clear. "You are the white man who has corrupted my sister with false friendship." "I haven't corrupted anybody," Sam replied carefully, keeping his hands visible. "We've been caring for the horse together." "Caring for horses is woman's work," Takoda sneered. "What is your true purpose here?" Before Sam could answer, the distant gunfire grew closer. Through the rain, they could hear shouting and the thunder of hoofbeats. Takoda's expression grew grim. "The soldiers have attacked our camp," he said to Aiyana in Apache, but Sam caught enough words to understand. "Many are dead. Father sends me to bring you to safety." Aiyana's face went pale. "The women and children?" "Most escaped to the high caves, but the soldiers pursue them." Takoda's eyes never left Sam. "This one's people have broken the peace. Now we answer with war." "Wait," Sam said, stepping forward despite the rifle pointed at his chest. "What soldiers?" "There's no army unit stationed near here." "Morrison's patrol," Takoda spat. "They came at first light, claiming to search for stolen cattle, but they brought fire and death." Sam felt sick. Morrison had finally found his excuse for violence, and innocent people were paying the price. "I had nothing to do with this. I tried to stop them from—" "Stop them?" Takoda's voice rose. "You knew they would attack?" "I knew they were forming patrols. I tried to warn—" Sam stopped, realizing he was only making things worse. "You see," Takoda said to his sister, "he admits his guilt. He knew of the attack and said nothing to our people." Aiyana looked at Sam with something like betrayal in her eyes. "You knew they would come for us." "I didn't know they would attack," Sam said desperately. "I thought they were just looking for sign, trying to scare you off. If I'd known Morrison planned violence—" "You would have done what?" Takoda demanded. "Warned your Apache friends? Betrayed your own people?" The question hung in the air like a blade. Sam realized with stark clarity that this was the choice he'd been avoiding for days, a choice between the world he'd known and the bridge he'd built with Aiyana. "Yes," he said quietly, "I would have warned them." The admission seemed to surprise Takoda, but his expression remained hostile. Pretty words, but words will not bring back the dead. A new sound reached them, the splash of horses moving through the muddy canyon. Sam recognized the voices immediately, Morrison and his patrol, following tracks that the rain had made all too clear. "They're coming," Sam said urgently. "You need to get out of here, both of you." But Takoda shook his head. "I will not run from these murderers. Let them come." "You can't fight them all," Sam argued. "And if they find Aiyana here—" "They will not touch her," Takoda said grimly, raising his rifle. The voices were getting closer. Sam could hear Morrison's gruff tones, angry and determined. "Tracks lead right down here, just like Pete said. Fresh ones, too." Sam looked at Aiyana, seeing the fear in her eyes despite her brave facade. Then he looked at Nashoba, standing proud and free in the rain. Everything they'd built together was about to be destroyed by the hatred and suspicion of men who saw only enemies where there might have been friends. "There's another way," Sam said suddenly. "The back trail through the rocks. You can reach the high country without being seen." "I know the way," Aiyana said. "But Nashoba can travel now," Sam finished. "He's strong enough." Takoda looked between them, suspicion warring with pragmatism. "Why do you help us escape? Your people are coming." Because she saved his life, Sam said, nodding toward the stallion. And because some things are more important than the color of a person's skin. The Apache warrior studied Sam's face for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he nodded. You speak truth. But this changes nothing between our peoples. The war has begun. I know, Sam said sadly. But maybe it doesn't have to consume everything. Crawford, you down there? Morrison's voice echoed off the canyon walls. Go, Sam urged. I'll hold them off as long as I can. Aiyana moved to Nashoba, who came to her immediately despite his recent injuries. The bond between them was unmistakable. The stallion trusted her completely. She looked back at Sam, her eyes bright with unshed tears. What we did here, she said softly. It mattered. It mattered, Sam agreed, knowing he might never see her again. Takoda helped his sister onto Nashoba's back, then looked at Sam one final time. If you truly wish to help, tell your people that we did not choose this war, but we will finish it. They disappeared into the rocks just as Morrison and his men splashed into the canyon proper. Sam turned to face them, his heart heavy with the knowledge that the fragile peace they'd built was shattered, perhaps forever. There you are, Morrison called out, his face flushed with anger and excitement. We've been looking for you. Did you hear the shooting? Hard to miss, Sam replied carefully. Found their camp about 5 miles south. Sent them running like rabbits. Morrison's eyes gleamed with savage satisfaction. But we lost the trail in this damn rain. Thought you might have seen something. Sam looked at the muddy ground where Aiyana and Takoda had stood moments before. The rain was washing away all signs of their presence, erasing the last evidence of what had been. Nothing, he said finally, just the storm. But as Morrison and his men searched the canyon, Sam knew the real storm was just beginning. The drought had ended, but the bloodshed it had spawned would likely claim many more lives before peace could return to this scarred land. Standing in the rain, Sam realized that healing, whether of a wounded horse or a wounded territory, was far more fragile than he'd ever imagined. And sometimes, despite all good intentions, the forces of hatred and fear proved stronger than the quiet bonds of compassion and understanding. 2 weeks after the storm, the territory had become a battleground. Apache war parties struck at isolated ranches, while settler patrols burned anything that might shelter the enemy. Sam's ranch lay in the middle of it all, a lonely outpost in a land gone mad with violence. He stood on his porch at sunset, watching smoke rise from the Henderson place 5 miles north. The family had fled to town days ago, leaving their home to the flames. Soon Sam knew he would face the same choice, abandon everything he'd built, or risk being caught in the crossfire of a war he'd never wanted. The sound of approaching horses made him reach for his rifle, but he relaxed when he recognized Jake Morrison's voice calling out a greeting. The older man rode up with his usual patrol, their faces grim in the fading light. Sam, Morrison said, dismounting heavily, we're pulling back to town. Army's finally sending troops, but they won't be here for another week. Can't protect the outer ranches until then. I'm not running, Sam replied quietly. Don't be a fool, Morrison snapped. You've seen what they do to isolated homesteads. Remember the Hutchins place? They found old Bill scattered across 3 rooms. Sam had heard the stories, each one worse than the last. The violence had escalated beyond anything anyone had imagined, fed by years of broken promises and mutual distrust. This is my land, he said simply. Your land won't do you much good if you're dead, Morrison pointed out. Besides, you've been acting strange lately. Some of the boys wonder if you can be trusted when it comes to fighting Apache. The accusation hung in the air between them. Sam knew his refusal to join the patrols had been noticed, just as he knew that Morrison suspected something about his activities during those crucial weeks before the fighting began. I've never run from a fight, Sam said carefully. No, but you ain't exactly jumped into this one either. Morrison's eyes were hard. Makes a man wonder where your loyalties lie. Before Sam could respond, a new sound cut through the evening air, the thunder of hoofbeats approaching fast. A lone rider emerged from the gathering darkness, and Sam's heart nearly stopped when he recognized the silhouette. It was Aiyana, mounted on Nashoba, riding directly toward them. Apache, one of Morrison's men shouted, raising his rifle. Hold your fire, Sam commanded, stepping between the patrol and the approaching rider. It's just a girl. Just a girl? Morrison's voice was incredulous. That's an Apache warrior, you fool. But as Aiyana drew closer, even the most trigger-happy members of the patrol could see she carried no weapons. She rode with a white cloth tied to a stick, a flag of truce that gave even Morrison pause. She stopped 30 yards away, well within rifle range but showing no fear. Nashoba stood perfectly still beneath her, his coat gleaming in the last rays of sunlight. The stallion had regained all his former magnificence, his wounds nothing but faint scars now. "I would speak with Sam Crawford," Aiyana called out, her voice carrying clearly across the distance. Morrison turned to Sam with suspicion written across his face. "You know this squaw?" "I've seen her before," Sam said, which was true enough. "What do you want?" he called to Aiyana. "To prevent more death," she replied. "My father would meet with the leaders of your people. He offers terms for peace." "Peace?" Morrison spat. "After what you savages have done? After you murdered innocent families?" "And after you murdered ours," Aiyana replied calmly. "But more killing will not bring back the dead, only create more widows and orphans." Sam could see the wisdom in her words, but he also saw the rage in Morrison's eyes. The old rancher had lost friends in the recent attacks, and his thirst for vengeance wouldn't be easily quenched. "Your father's the one they call Many Horses," Morrison demanded. "He is," Aiyana confirmed. "He is a man of honor who wishes to end this war before it destroys us all." "Then tell him to surrender," Morrison said harshly. "Unconditionally. That's the only terms we'll accept." "That is not peace," Aiyana replied. That is conquest. My father offers something different, a way for both peoples to live in this land without constant war." Sam stepped forward, ignoring Morrison's restraining hand on his arm. "What kind of terms?" "The old boundaries will be respected. Apache will not raid beyond the marked stones, and white settlers will not cross into our sacred places. Trade instead of war. Cooperation instead of killing." "Sounds like surrender to me," one of Morrison's men muttered. "It sounds like sense," Sam said, and felt every eye turn toward him. "We've been fighting for weeks now. How many more have to die before we admit this isn't working?" Morrison's face darkened. "I knew it. You're Indian-loving trash, Crawford. Probably been dealing with them all along." The accusation was dangerous, and Sam knew it. In the current climate, being branded a traitor could mean a rope around his neck. But as he looked at Aiyana, sitting proud and fearless on the horse they'd saved together, he realized he didn't care about the consequences. "Maybe I am," he said quietly. "Maybe I'm tired of watching good people die over things that happened before any of us were born." Morrison's hand dropped to his gun. "You admitting to treason, Crawford?" "I'm admitting to having a brain," Sam replied, "and using it instead of letting fear and hatred do my thinking for me." The tension ratcheted higher as the patrol members shifted nervously, unsure whether they were about to witness an arrest or a gunfight. But before anyone could draw, Aiyana spoke again. "There is something else," she said, her voice cutting through the hostility. "Something that proves peace is possible." She gestured to Nashoba, who stepped forward at her touch. This horse was dying, trapped in wire and bleeding his life away. But two people, one Apache, one white, worked together to save him. We trusted each other when trust seemed impossible. We healed what seemed beyond healing. Sam felt his throat tighten as he understood what she was doing. She was risking everything to tell their story, to show these angry men that cooperation was possible. "That horse became a bridge between our worlds," Aiyana continued. "He taught us that enemies can become friends when they share a common purpose, that healing is stronger than hatred." Morrison looked between Sam and Aiyana, his face slowly changing as understanding dawned. "You," he said to Sam, "you've been meeting with her. While we were organizing patrols, you were consorting with the enemy." "I was saving a life," Sam said simply. "Same as I do for any injured animal, same as I do for any person, regardless of the color of their skin." "And I was learning," Aiyana added, "that not all white men are filled with hatred, that some still remember how to see past fear, to find hope." For a moment, the only sound was the evening wind whistling through the desert scrub. Then Morrison slowly holstered his gun. "You're both fools," he said heavily. "But maybe that's what this territory needs. A few more fools and fewer warriors." He turned to his men. "We'll take the girl's message to town. Let the officials decide about peace talks." He looked back at Sam. "But don't think this changes anything between us, Crawford. You chose your side." As the patrol rode away, Sam and Aiyana were left alone in the gathering darkness. She dismounted from Nashoba and walked toward him, her steps careful but determined. "Will they listen?" she asked. "Some will," Sam said. "Others won't. But at least the offer will be made." They stood together beside the stallion who had brought them together, watching the stars appear in the clear desert sky. The drought was over, The rains had come, and slowly the land was beginning to heal. Perhaps, Sam thought, people could learn to heal as well. "What happens now?" Aiyana asked softly. "Now we wait," Sam replied, "and hope that bridges are stronger than walls." Nashoba nickered softly, nuzzling first Aiyana's shoulder, then Sam's. The great horse seemed to understand that his work was not yet finished, that the bridge he had helped create between two wounded souls might yet span the divide between two wounded peoples. In the distance, a coyote howled, and the desert night embraced them all with its ancient, patient wisdom. The war might continue, or peace might prevail, but whatever came next, they would face it together. The Apache girl, the lonely rancher, and the magnificent stallion who had taught them both that even the deepest wounds could heal when tended with patience, understanding, and love.